Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus and compare it against the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus and see which specific phone is the better one for you. Now the one thing I will definitely tell you is that the S23 Plus is probably going to be the better phone pretty much in every single area, maybe besides the price tag. The battery should be better on the S23 Plus. So if you're wanting to go ahead and get the cheapest phone, like the complete cheapest phone between all these, then clearly the S10 Plus is going to be the better way to go. But I do think for the average person out there, getting a device like an S10 Plus even probably isn't a good idea anymore, considering that the S10 Plus is also unsupported with software. So keep that in mind in the back of your head. But regardless, I do have a lot of respect for the S10 series in general. I think they were some of the best phones Samsung's ever made. So if you want to buy some of these phones, I would recommend. Links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the fronts of both of these phones, first of all, these were both very good Plus phones that Samsung made, and I still love them a lot when I look at them. On the front of the S10 Plus, we have a 6.4-inch dynamic AMOLED display, and it is a very good panel. It's 1440p, so actually a higher resolution than what we're getting on the S23 Plus, which is pretty insane. And honestly, it was probably one of the best panels ever made at that moment from Samsung, but also it holds up very, very well. It's a hole punch display, but it did have like this dual hole punch, kind of funny looking thing on the top right corner. It also, looks very nice. It has a curved edge too, which is so beautiful. The only thing kind of going against this phone slightly maybe is probably the fact that this phone, doesn't have 120 hertz on the display anymore. I never really had it. It only has 60 hertz, which I think is probably good enough for a lot of people out there as well. But just kind of keep that in mind. That's kind of what you're working with on that type of device. Now on the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus, on the other hand, we now have a 6.6-inch dynamic AMOLED display. So it's a little bit tiny bit bigger, but it's kind of in like the same ballpark. Like it's not that far off from something like a Galaxy S10 Plus in terms of size. It's 1080p, so like I said, it is a lower resolution on that type of device. But it's a 120 hertz panel, which is beautiful, and it honestly is a really good looking phone. I mean, I would probably argue that phone looks better than the S10 Plus on the front, but I still think the S10 Plus is still a very, very good looking phone as well. Now, some other crazy things going for the S10 Plus. For one, you have a headphone jack on that type of device, which is pretty crazy. You also have a microSD card slot on the S10 Plus as well, where the S23 Plus doesn't have any of those things. So you have USB Type-C ports on both, but the S10 Plus has some crazy I/O. In fact, I think this was the last Samsung Galaxy S phone, the S phone, to actually have a headphone jack and microSD card slot, which is pretty crazy. It wasn't the last one to have a microSD card, but the last one to have that combo. Now on the back, we also have a kind of interesting back between both because they're both very different. So the S10 Plus, we had that standard glass back with that camera module basically going through the whole entire top portion of that phone. Not quite like the Pixels, but it was a pretty good looking, back, and I think at that time it was a very nice looking back for sure. With the Galaxy S23 Plus though, we do kind of get this frosted glass back with the camera module on the complete, top left of that phone. So I think on that phone it looks good too. Like there's again not too much to hate on it there. But when I do look at a phone like the S10 Plus, it definitely does look a little bit dated. I think it's the mixture of that standard glass back with that camera module looking like that. I feel like I'm so used to like a phone looking like the Pixel or the iPhone or these newer Samsungs that type of device looks a little bit older, but even then, still a very good looking phone in the S10 Plus. So on the outside, that kind of covers it up. I definitely would say the S23 Plus is the better looking one, but the S10 Plus still holds up very, very well. Now in the camera department, we are both getting triple camera setups on both of these devices. So with the S10 Plus, we're getting a 12 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide camera. Whereas on the Galaxy S23 Plus, we're getting a 50 megapixel wide angle lens, 10 megapixel telephoto lens, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. Now the one thing I will definitely tell you about basically both these phones is that they have very solid cameras for their times. Even on the front, you're getting, 4K at 60 on the front of both these phones, which is honestly really cool. But the craziest thing is, Samsung makes some of the best cameras. And I remember back in 2020 or 2019 when the S10 Plus came out, I was still taking a look at that phone and I was shocked about how good of a camera that was. Nowadays, we look at phones kind of like the Samsung Galaxy, S23 or the S23 Ultra. And those are some of the best cameras I would say out in the market right now, especially with that 8K capability on the back. That's honestly like unmatched for a lot of manufacturers. So I definitely look at a phone like a Galaxy S23 Plus as it being the better camera. Is it a reason to go and upgrade? Honestly, for some people, yeah, that might be enough of a reason to go and upgrade from an S10 Plus. It is definitely that good of a camera with a lot more features built in as well. It wouldn't be the reason I would go and upgrade. I would still go and upgrade to the S23 Plus, but it wouldn't be just because of the camera. But that is a really good camera you're getting on there. But the 2019 flagship from Samsung still holds up very well too. So I don't want to state that camera is bad or anything, but you're definitely getting a better camera, I would say, from the S23 Plus. Now on the software and the longevity side, this is another one of those areas where the S10 Plus is kind of, I would say, is dropping the ball. With the S10 Plus, it is kind of, I would say, unsupported with software as of right now, which is kind of an issue with that type of device. So what do I mean by that? Well, pretty much with something like the Galaxy, S10 Plus and the S10 in general, those phones are discontinued with software. So that is kind of a weird thing. If you're planning on getting a phone like that, you're not going to be getting that next version of software, which can throw off a lot of people. So any of those newer features that we're getting or anything remotely close to that, you will not be getting that on the Galaxy S10 Plus anymore. It's very sad, but it's just like one of those things you just kind of have to keep in mind. With the Galaxy S23 Plus, that phone is just getting started with updates. Like, it just started with updates today. So like, you might as well, if you're gonna, stick with one thing, you might as well go and get that device over the S20 or S10 Plus because it's still supported with software. So keep that in mind, but that's usually how these things go, and it's just kind of one of those sad things, but it's totally understandable. So from that perspective, that kind of covers it up there. Now in the performance, we're also getting some massive improvements to the Galaxy S23 Plus. So, internally, the S10 Plus had that Snapdragon 855 chipset inside of it, with 6 gigs of RAM on the base model, 8 gigs of RAM on the mid-tier model, and 12 gigabytes of RAM on the top-tier model, whereas on the S23 Plus had the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset with 8 gigabytes of RAM. So technically speaking, you can get the same amount of RAM, if not more RAM, on the S10 Plus than you could on the S23 Plus. So that is actually kind of crazy that you're getting that type of overlap because the S10 Plus could end up getting more RAM. Now, I would still say the better, more faster phone is definitely going to be with the S23 Plus. With that 8 Gen 2 chipset, Qualcomm did a really good job. I think with the 8 Gen 2, we're still going to have to test it, making sure it's not super throttling or anything like that. But with the S10 Plus, I felt like that performance was pretty good as well. I used that phone quite a bit. And with the whole entire S10 series in general, it was pretty solid. With the S23 Plus, it is definitely taking that to a whole nother level. Any games that you play is just going to be top tier. If you're doing any emulation gaming, that is also going to be top tier on this type of device. And I still think Snapdragon with Qualcomm, that is the top tier. That is the pinnacle of majority of, phone chipsets. I would say the A series from Apple is also up there as well, but nothing really competes with the Snapdragon, especially on Android. So take it as you will. Both these phones, are still fast, but the Galaxy S23 Plus is clearly the faster one. The S10 Plus is still pretty fast for how old it is too. So that kind of covers it up there as well. In the battery life segment, you got a 4100 mAh battery on the S10 Plus. The S23 Plus has a 4700 mAh battery. So again, you're going to be getting a bigger battery and better battery life, presumably, on the S23 Plus than on the Galaxy S10 Plus. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I would definitely tell you is a phone like the Galaxy S23 Plus is clearly the better one in pretty much every single area. There isn't really an area where I would look at something like the Galaxy S10 Plus and think to myself that is the better phone. The only area I can even kind of remotely think about that in is probably with the, price tag. Other than that, you're going to be getting a way better phone, just a better performing phone in general with everything considered on the S23 Plus than on the Galaxy S10 Plus. So keep that in mind, but that's kind of how I compare these phones as of right now. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.